Hey, everybody, and welcome to episode 21 of An Action Filmmaking Podcast. I'm Tommy DiNucci, as always, here with Mike Messier. And this week, we are going to talk all about one of the most important parts of the filmmaking process, the make or break, key, crucial pre-production phase. But before we get into that, Mike, how you doing, brother? What's shaking? What's new?
Well, I'm good, Tommy. Good to be here again. We had a great show last week. In the past few days, I was got some nice news. Actually, on September 11th, I got the news, so I held off on sharing it. But the over in India, there's a film festival called the Makis Mithran International Film Festival that actually gave me not one, not two, but three awards. Two for my proof of concept video, Seduction of Distance, for Best Mobile Short and Best Actor. And also an old favorite of mine, The Nature of the Flame, won their Best Environmental Movie. So that was nice. But like I said, because that news got to me on September 11th, I held off on sharing that for a few days out of respect, and kind of coincides with our topic last week that I think we got a lot of views and a lot of positive feedback on Man in Red Bandana episode.
Yes, that is a fact, Mike. We did have a great episode last week. We got Stephen E checking in. What's up, Stephen? We've got Kim checking in. Hey, Kim. Yeah, congratulations, Mike. That's awesome. I'm just gonna fix my screen here, show you behind the scenes of the porch setup here
Yeah.
for An Action Podcast. Now I've got my proper lighting set up. I'm whacking lamps. Here we are. It's a rainy Tuesday. Mike, that's awesome news about the film festival. We've got Kim. We've got Stephen. Yeah, last week we had some really great feedback across the board on our episode talking about Man in Red Bandana, the documentary film by Matthew Weiss. Go check it out if you haven't. Um, yeah, overall, I'm happy to say, again, we're trying to grow this show. We're working really hard to do it. We're putting out our consistent episodes, and we're really ecstatic to see that work pay off a little bit because last week was our most viewed episode in a 1 week span. Not overall, but we had a lot of people tune in and take a look at the episode and learn a little bit more about Wells. And I'm excited that last week happened to be our most watched episode in a 1 week span because that means the most people possible got a chance to learn a little bit more about this great American hero, Wells Remy Crowther. So great episode to do it on. Thank you for everybody who's been hanging in there every week and kind of going through some of the growing pains of any podcast with us and staying tuned in. So we appreciate that, and we're fired up for today's episode.
Yeah, it's going to be great. I mean, the topic is pre-production, and Tommy's made a great outline for this show, and I'm looking forward to learning some things. And even just reading your outline, there was some insights into your process that I can't wait to hear about. Specifically, the storyboarding, your unique storyboarding technique. But I won't kill the lead or bury the lead, whatever that term is. I'll let you. We'll progress into it, but I am looking forward to that section in particular.
Well, let's get right into it. Mike, I was telling you a little bit off air before we started. I'm kind of uniquely qualified to be talking about this topic this week. I'm going into pre-production on a feature film. So literally in the next week or two, you're going to see me start to utilize everything on the list here and start to really get into what I call, ready for this? Pre-production is basically any filmmaker's Rocky training montage, to use a movie reference. That's the Rocky workout montage right before the movie. That's the, hit the soundtrack. You can hear the Gonna Fly Now, the theme by, what is it? Is it Bill Conti? Bill Conti is Gonna Fly Now is pumping
Yeah.
through the speakers. And you got 6 to 8 weeks to get ready for a fight. And that's what it is, man. Making a movie is a fight. If anyone tells you otherwise, they ain't doing it right. It's a challenge every single day. You're going to be up against multiple hurdles, enemies, whatever you want to call them. It's a fight, and you better train for it. So we're going to kind of get right into it. There's all different types of pre-production, and a lot of times it comes down to, I've had the benefit of making movies where I know a year out on making this movie. You know, like for example,
Right.
movies like in the early days, movies like Self Storage. I didn't really know when the movie was going to be made, but I still had all these. I was so excited about it that I probably was soft prepping. We call it. I was soft prepping like a year in advance. Movies like Vault. I remember really getting into that prep process early. Like again, probably 8 months before we even started shooting. I was walking around location scouting with Chad Verdi and the team, and we were locking down where we were going to shoot. So then, on the contrary, I've had movies where I've literally gotten the phone call. Uh, you know, for example, I did a movie called Saving Christmas, which we're going to get into when we get probably closer to Christmas in December. That entire movie they wanted in like 6 weeks, and I had to write the script too. So it's one of those
Right.
things where like some movies you literally don't have the benefit of much prep. I remember I did a kids movie where I literally had like a week's worth of prep, and then once I got to LA, I think I had a couple days on the ground. So everything's different. Every project is different, but today's system is based off of having about a 6 to 8 week prep, which is pretty standard. And I'm going to say this too. This is my warning to all filmmakers out there getting it done. As We have Anna chiming in. I think Anna chimed in with us last week. Welcome back. It's nice to have you on the show. So basically, the important thing to remember is yes, there are going to be some projects that will pay you for prep. We all want to make money because time is money. And anytime that you're working on these projects, even though that they might be passion projects and you love them and you love making films and making movies is your dream. Well, guess what? It's still an occupation and you're still working. So like when you're doing that stuff, when you're prepping right down to the first time you read the script and right down to when you kind of put together your shot list and everything else that we're going to talk about, you're working. So don't forget that. So when you negotiate your rate, make sure to try to put a little something in there for your prep time, because again, I'm not trying to make producers look like the big bad wolf, but like it's the nature of the beast, and it's one of those things that kind of gets swept under the rug sometimes. But a lot of times, like you'll get talking, your rate will kind of be brought up, but they won't really bring up prep time, and it's kind of like, okay, well, you don't expect me to just show up on day one without having put in any work and start shooting. So, yeah, you might want to talk to them again. And here's kind of the part two to that. You have to be fair in your own right. If you're doing it right and you're really passionate about it as a filmmaker, let's face it, you're going to have to do some unpaid prep, most likely, especially on these levels. At this level, when you're working with movies, say under $1 million, you're going to have to do some pro bono prep, we'll call it. And you know what? Part of that's called self pride, just as an artist. You should want to do that prep. So take it from me, even though you might not be getting paid a great deal of money during the prep process, it's worth it to take advantage of that 6 to 8 weeks before, if anything, for your own sanity, for when you get to set on day one and you're not running around like a chicken with your head cut off. You're actually ready to go. You're ready to execute.
Hey, Tommy, let me just jump in and kind of you and I have talked about this privately, just as compatriots. But a lot of people who are kind of on the verge of getting into the entertainment industry, or they're on the outside wanting to get in, or they're starting to get in, they sometimes don't realize that a lot of people like yourself, myself, other many thousands of other people, if not millions, put a lot of time into paying your dues without getting paid, so to speak. Like, yeah, you and I have sat there and figured out if we were getting paid for a screenplay, or in your case for producing a film or directing, if you were really to break down the amount of hours of work versus the money you're getting paid, it would be less than minimum wage in some cases, because there's so many times when you're doing things on speculation that something's going to get accomplished or get made. There's so many times when you're meeting for these hour and a half coffees just to conjecture with somebody about their dream of making a movie that 99 times out of 100 doesn't happen. And that stuff adds up. And I don't think a lot of people appreciate those type of considerations. If you're going to try to make your way in the entertainment world, you're not always going to get paid a fair rate, and that's just part of the game, unfortunately.
Well, the idea is this, and that there's definitely truth to that, what you just said, but let's paint it in a different way. Let's try to paint it with a positive brush in the sense that if you work hard and put that sweat equity in, and a lot of times people love dressing up working for free with the following phrases. This is how you'll hear people kind of romanticize working for free. They'll use terms like sweat equity. They'll use terms like, this is one of my favorite ones, investing in yourself, right?
Yeah.
So if you do
Learning
those things,
experience.
yeah, if you get yourself the learning experience and you invest in yourself and you basically work for fucking free, let's be honest,
Right.
you're only going to help yourself. It's like, again, I hate to keep using these boxing references and sports references, but it's like, yeah, you might not be getting paid a lot of money to fight in this particular match that you got coming up in 6 weeks. So you could, yeah, maybe I'm not going to train. I'm not getting as much money, but like, do you want to get your ass kicked in front of your entire family and friends?
Right.
No. So you better get your ass in the gym. Otherwise, you're going to get your fucking ass kicked. And I don't care how much money they're paying you or how little money they're paying you. There's something about having the pride where you don't want to get beat up. And to me, I'm equating all this to physical abuse. But to me, getting made to look bad and putting out a shitty movie, I'd rather get knocked out in front of everybody than
Yeah.
put out a shitty movie, because that's what I do. So it's like,
Right.
that's the equivalent. If you throw up a dud and make a piece of shit movie, maybe you didn't train hard enough. It's like, maybe you're Mike Tyson versus Buster Douglas and it should have been an easy win, but you were up all night partying your ass off with tigers and hookers instead of fighting.
Geisha girls. Well, it's actually my favorite boxing match. I think Douglas just had his number that night. But going back to the pre-production, I'll let you go back onto the outline there because you had a nice set of bullet points. So I'll let you get back into it.
Yeah, so early on, there's the very early stages when, like, let's say you just get called up tomorrow. We're gonna do this. Hey, Mike, we need you to do this movie. We're sending you the script now. All right. So you've already negotiated your rate. You're ready to go. You're in. First things first. The script is the blueprint. And as the filmmaker, you should know the script better than anyone. You should know every fucking thing about it. You should know every character in the movie. Just about, you're not going to have their lines memorized, but you should kind of know what they say, what their intent is in every scene. You should know what's happening in every scene. You should just know it inside out. And the only way you can truly do that is by reading it almost every day. So like, I really recommend, like, in the early stages of the game, I'm talking like, week 1, 6 to 8 weeks out. I would, and this is gonna sound nuts, but I would spend like the first week reading the script every fucking day. There's a lot of filmmakers, you'd be surprised. They read it once, maybe twice. And this is obviously, I'm talking about a script that you didn't write. I'm talking about a hired gun kind of job, which the movie that I have coming up, it's a hired gun scenario. This is a script that I didn't write. So my big thing is I am just trying to become one with that script and memorizing every little moment and knowing it like it as well as a script that I wrote myself. Because what's going to happen is on set, everyone and their cousin is going to ask you, "Hey, in this scene here, when Jimmy comes by with the car and he comes in, where are they heading to? And oh, on what day does this happen?" Basically, my point is, you're going to get so many questions that you're not going to want to have to keep. Oh wait, hold on, let's look in the script. Oh wait, hold on, let's keep. You're going to waste so much fucking time referencing the script. You're better off just spending a few days and just like committing that shit to memory so that the script is like a part of your DNA for that little stretch. And then you're going to be well equipped to answer all the questions that people are going to ask you, because I've done it before, guys. Nothing makes you feel dumber than when a crew person, like a key department head, asks you something about the script, and you have that moment like you're a little kid again and the teacher asked you something that you don't know, and you have that moment of like, Oh shit. I don't know. Let me check that out. Now
Right.
suddenly you're now you have to tell your crew person I don't know, and it just makes you look like you don't know quite what the fuck you're doing. And you'll slowly lose the respect of the people around you if you don't know what the fuck's happening in your own goddamn movie.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing in a different way. I was going to say you're going to lose confidence in your collaborators or even your underlings if you're the director and the director of photography or a grip or somebody asks you an important question, or even an actor, probably the worst. And if you've got to scramble through that script and find the answer, you're not going to look like a strong director in that scenario.
No, and trust me, I don't mean to sound negative, but inevitably when you're the director, there's always going to be a person or two on that set that might undermine you or might be, I don't want to say they're gunning for your job, but let's face it, everybody wants to direct for the most part. You go on a set and you talk to every PA, if there's 10 PAs, and you ask every one of them, what do you want to do someday? They're almost 80% of them are going to say, I'd love to direct someday. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. That's a great thing. That's what you should want to do. You should want to be in that position and tell stories. But my point is, there's going to still be people looking to poke holes in the confidence of the director. So the more you know, the less chance they have to try to, instead of when the boat's taking on water, they'd be that motherfucker taking water, put it on the goddamn boat when everyone's bailing it out. So when you know everything, it's harder to poke holes in that confidence. So the next thing is just again early stages. I'm watching the film in my head, meaning I'm reading it. Movies and music, we've talked about the connection before and how important that is. I like to make a playlist. So early on, I'm going to make a playlist of music that I really like, that kind of inspires me, that makes me think about the film itself. Movies, are just so the movies and music are the best marriage. It really is. There's nothing like it. Matching the right song to the right visual, it can just create such an amazing feeling. And although you won't most likely have the money to get all these songs in your soundtrack someday, I recommend making a playlist. Like if money were no object and you could have millions of dollars to spend on any song you want, what would the soundtrack of this movie be in an ideal world? Um, and hey, it doesn't have to be top 40 type music. It doesn't have to be by popular artists. You can go and I listen to I work with Glenn Ciano a lot. When we're writing, we'll listen to a lot of scores. We'll listen to a lot of uh, scores that kind of fit the bill. If we're making a horror movie, we'll probably listen to like a scary score, maybe Friday the 13th. If we're making an action movie, maybe we'll dust off the Lethal Weapon soundtrack. So make yourself a playlist that has music that gets your brain in the mental mindset of the film, and the tone and what you'd like to create of the film. Um, and then obviously this is, kind of a no brainer, but I don't think a lot of filmmakers do this. And I think it's like so fucking obvious. But go out and pick 6, 7, 8 movies that are kind of like the movie that you're going to make. And I'm not saying you steal from them, but you pick some things that inspire you and you find ways to maybe emulate them or make them your own, or oh, I really like the way they revealed that character, I can do something similar in my movie. And hey, it doesn't need to be the same exact movie. Like just because you're making an action movie doesn't mean you need to go out and watch a bunch of action movies. There might be a romantic scene in the action movie and you find some old uh romantic film that you really want to kind of emulate something that you saw one day when you were coming up. Um, I think it's okay and important actually to find movies that inspire you and take a page out of that book. Especially since, and we've talked about this a little bit on the show and off air, Mike. It seems like more so than ever, people are forgetting the past in the sense that I feel like when I was a kid, not to go into the weeds on this, but like when I was a kid, we had movie stores, we had the rental stores. So like it wasn't
Right.
anything to walk into the store and see a movie from 10, 15 years ago, but it was right in front of your face. You saw the case, you saw the artwork, you were aware of it. I feel like in the digital world, when there's less tangible items, a movie comes out, it plays for a little bit, and then it's fucking gone. You don't have the VHS sitting on your shelf at home forever in mom and dad's VHS collection. You don't have these kind of relics of the film lying around, so we forget about shit. So it's
Or
almost
even
like
the
if you're go ahead, Mike.
even the human element. You don't have Lenny Schwartz at Hollywood Video down the street showing you all the latest and greatest films that you should be watching. You know, as far as the local video store and the smart clerk who knows all the newest movies, who's telling you what you'd like to watch or making suggestions, and that human interaction is gone. I did want to, while you're talking just now, Tommy, a word came to mind that might be a good future episode. So I won't go down the rabbit hole too much, but the word genre came to mind. Like if you're watching movies, horror or romance or whatever, if you're watching movies that are similar to your film in the same ballpark, the word genre is important. And I think that kind of gets overlooked by some people when they're first starting.
Yeah, no question, Mike, because Mike's talking about genre, meaning like the different categories, and the fact of the matter is, there are fans that love those different genres, and you hate to use the word formulaic because people look at formulaic like it's a negative thing, but
Right.
formulaic's a good thing. Formulaic means, hey, here's a process that if you follow, that shit's gonna work. So I don't mind formulaic. So basically, what Mike's saying is a lot of the fans of those genres, they like to stay true to the genre, and by staying true to the genre, there are certain elements that they're looking for. So you can kind of almost look for those breadcrumbs and be like, "Ooh, we have something kind of like that in our movie. Fans are gonna like that." Checking in here with our and action pals. Stephen E. Blockbuster. We didn't have Tommy K's. That must be a regional thing, but we most certainly had Blockbuster. And how about obviously we had Hollywood Video, but you know what my favorite one was, and I think it was actually purchased by Blockbuster. But I was a big Major Video kind of
Oh, there
guy.
you go.
Uh,
Yeah.
I
Yeah, I
think the
remember that one.
slogan was like Major Video, we bring it on home, something like that. Who remembers
Yeah.
the jingle to Major Video? This guy. Anna says, "What movies inspire you?" Well, that's a big one. Real quick, just before we get into moving ahead on pre-production, I'm a big Martin Scorsese guy. I love Martin Scorsese. His movies get me all fired up and kind of just like I don't know, something goes off and it makes me want to be creative. How about you, Mike? One quick one before we move on.
I would say Highlander is probably my favorite movie of all time, and
Really
in more recent years, The Conjuring and Annabelle films, I like those a lot as far as horror goes.
dark, Mike. You're in a dark patch, brother. In a dark patch. I like that. Well, tis the season. This is the time of year for that.
Halloween
Okay,
Heaven.
so guys, we're listening to music that inspire us. We're watching movies that inspire us. Next part, we're memorizing the script, right? These are all things that we're doing. Early prep. This is like week 1, week 2. Build a mood board. All right. Now, I'm not one of these guys who, I don't have a lot of mood boards. Okay. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with being a mood board guy, but there's a little stigma there. I'm not a mood board guy, but what I like to
Sure.
do is I like to find photographs that excite me and get me inspired. They can be photographs from historical events in history. They could be actual photographs from films. So when you're watching those movies that we talked about, this is very important, and I probably should have mentioned this when talking about watching the goddamn movies. But screenshot that shit, even if it means, and I do it all the time, guys. Like again, I'm about as technical as you know, as this cigarette lighter right here. I am
Right.
not a very fancy guy. Um, so I don't really even do any weird like cropping and screenshotting. I literally take my phone and I'll take a picture of the screen. Real fucking simple. And then I'll basically give all those photos to whoever's come on as my assistant on the project, usually Mike Braga. Shout out to Mike. And I'll have them like basically just take all those pictures and make me a folder or a mood board or some kind of digital file. And the reason why that's so important is I can then take that and ship it off to whoever works as my cinematographer. And then my DP and I can be talking about these shots and saying, like, because it's not just about the composition of the photos, it's the color in the photos, it's the tone. The photos are also important because it's not just about shot composition. I might see a cool uh, jacket that I like, and I'll take a photo of that jacket, and I might give that photo to my costumer, being like, "Hey, is there anything like this jacket that we can get for our character?" Or I might see a cool bar, like an actual, a bar where people sit down and have drinks, and I might be able to show that bar to a production designer and say, like, "Hey, this bar is awesome. Can we kind of do something like that in our bar scene?" So it's like these photos become so essential when talking to my department heads that are basically like, the other coaches on the coaching staff. Got to break that off to them, and now they're going to go take those images and get creative and go to work, and they'll have an idea of what's inside my head. A lot of prep is basically about taking your brain, ready, cracking the top of your fucking skull open, ripping your brain out, and kind of like flipping your brain inside out so that it can be shown to the world. Because let's face it, you got all these ideas in your head, but you can't always articulate them to everyone on day one of the fucking movie. So
Right.
you take these 6 to 8 weeks before to have meetings and conversations and talk to all of your key department heads about what's inside your brain and how you plan on flipping that shit inside out and getting it on the screen. And then all these people basically become like, uh, sort of like translators of your brain. What do you think of
Well,
that?
great points, Tommy. As you were speaking, it made me realize or remember that with Final Draft 12, which is the professional screenwriting software, for the latest edition 12, they've actually have a feature where you can insert images into your script, which traditionally you don't have images in a script. But I think just for what you're mentioning here, maybe for people that want to do something a little bit different with their title page, or they want to have illustrations in their shooting script for their crew or whatever, that option is now available for the screenwriters out there.
Yeah, there's no question about it. A picture's worth 1,000 words, man. And it's so much easier to show a crew person a photo of something in your mind than it is to explain it. I don't care how smart you are. I don't care how great with words you are. There's nothing like, if we're all making movies, we're probably visual people.
Right.
So, chances are if you say, "Hey, I want this right here," and you point to a photo of a shot and how it's composed, a DP is going to be able to say, "Ooh, I like that. Yeah, let's figure that out. Let's start." You'll see them start to look around the room and, figure out the space and how it's all going to work. So yes, mood boards are great. Stephen E agrees. Try it out, man. It really does work, and it's cool. It's fun to look for these kind of photos. I like doing a photo hunt. Kim is always screenshotting. Yeah, it's funny. Sometimes I'll look through my phone. You got to clear it out. You got 1,000 pictures or whatever, and I'll say, "What the hell did I screenshot this for?" I have no
Right.
idea, but there was something I liked about this kangaroo. Um, okay, moving on here. So this is another one for the early part of the process. Um, Local casting's big, man. I mean, most movies that you make, you're gonna get handed, uh, say, 7 or 8 roles that you need to cast locally. You'll have your 1 or 2 stars that kind of usually are already attached to the project. And then you'll have a good chunk of day players and even key roles that, when I say they need to be cast locally, I mean the movie probably doesn't have the money to fly them in and put them up in hotels and all that good stuff. So you have no choice but to cast from your local talent crop, which usually is, yeah, I'd say within an hour drive. You usually don't want actors driving any more than an hour, hour and a half without a hotel room, because then it becomes unsafe. And that's a whole different story. But you don't want people working 12 to 14 hours who have already drove to get there an hour and a half, and then they
Right.
have to drive an hour and a half to 2 hours home at 3 in the morning. That's how people literally, it can be tragic. So the local talent pool is big. what I like to do, and I don't always have time to do this during prep. This is almost like a side note to just like be mindful of this shit. Go to plays, go to local theatrical productions, be on the lookout because it's going to happen pretty quickly. The casting process is quick. People don't realize it, but in about 2 weeks, you're going to have to put together your entire movie. So if you've already kind of been out on the local scene and you've seen, every theater company has their top one or two actors. Nobody wants to play favorites, but I'm not a bullshitter, so like I'll play those favorites. There's gonna always be one or two people that stand out.
Right.
So if you go to a play or two in your local area, chances are you're gonna find that one or two standout performances that you say to yourself, "Oh shit, you know what? There's a part in my movie that this guy would be great for." And again, it's local theater, so like if you're asking, well, how do you get a hold of these people? You could literally like hang out at the theater and wait for the thing to calm down. And after most show, these small local theater, they're gonna come out and shake hands with grandma and grandpa and Auntie Susan or whoever the fuck else came to the show. You could be there too, and you could shake their hand and say, "Hey, I'm Mike. I'm a filmmaker. I got a movie coming out. It just won a film festival in India." You know, right, Mike? Isn't that where you won? Where'd you
Yeah,
win?
yeah. The 3 awards came from India, and I'm big
How
in
do you like
India,
that,
for whatever reason. I've won a
Mike?
few other awards from that
It is
country.
it is fair to say that you have fans worldwide, brother.
That's nice.
Okay, so we've talked about be paying attention to that local talent because you don't want to be caught with your casting pants down, and it's like shit. I've got to cast this movie, and I don't really know anyone, and then obviously this is we're going to talk about the regular casting process. We might as well get into that right now. Usually you hire a casting company. That's going to be something that gets done early. For me, I've worked with Boston Casting a lot. They are the best. They're phenomenal in terms of just like reach and overall like you know their ability to cast a web and reach out to as many actors as possible in the New England area. Keep in mind, I'm sure if you're in New York, there's probably places in New York, LA, whatever, in Atlanta, whatever. There are other casting places. I'm just talking about who I use because I'm here
That's
in Rhode
Angela.
Island.
That's Angela Perry at Boston Casting. Do I have that right?
Yeah, Angela Perry at Boston Casting is phenomenal. She's always done a lot of great work for myself,
Yeah.
uh, for Verdi Productions on movies that I've worked on with them. She's awesome. So if you're looking to make a movie and you're in the New England area, you owe it to yourself to give Boston Casting a call and hire them for their services. Stephen E. checks in with Boston Casting is great. Uh, yes, Angela and Michaela. Um, so Boston Casting's big. Uh, but what's great about them, and like I said, I'm sure any great casting company that's kind of worth their weight in gold, they'll have these kind of implements set up because casting can be stressful. Trust me. I mean, decision making is difficult, and when you cast, you're literally picking the people that are going to go and the colors that you choose to paint with, if you will, to make your composition.
Right.
Um, so it's a big part of it. Those are the players that are going to be on the field. And a lot of times you can be torn. But when you have a really good casting agent, they almost work as like, it's almost like your caddy in golf. They're like, yeah, I think you might want to go with this club for this. Like I've worked with this person before. Again, like you're never going to have a casting agent is just there to help. They're gonna be there to let you know little things and oh, this person's very reliable or oh, nah, we've had a little I don't know about this on this guy. He's been a little sketchy in the past. So it's a fun process. It's a strenuous process in the sense that you're going to be watching a lot of tapes and you're going to spend a lot of time on it. But the nice thing is, again, 2020 brought us a wonderful machine device called Zoom. That was one of the only great, really one of the only byproducts of the pandemic that I think we can all really agree on was beneficial was the ability to hop on a Zoom and for casting purposes, um, for me to just kind of quickly go through. I can see a dozen people in a half an hour, whereas if we were sitting in the office and the people had to come in and come out and they had to find a parking spot and everyone's switching out and so who's running late and who got stuck in traffic with Zoom, we can just bang out an entire casting process pretty quickly.
Well, also, Tommy, during the pandemic, I rediscovered Actors Access, which I had an account like 10 years ago, and I didn't have much luck with it in the 2010s. But in 2020, I got back on Access, and the website has improved. It's much more user friendly. And then I actually filmed a proof of concept video where I used the other side of that coin, Breakdown Express, in order to do the casting, which was actually free as a filmmaker. I had to show proof of identity and take an online tutorial. But the point is, you're right. Zoom, Skype. That's another good way to rehearse with actors that I discovered a couple of years ago. Was using online conference calls even before the pandemic. I did that with the Impeccable short film to rehearse online, and it really was very beneficial because the actors all knew their lines coming to the set, and so we saved so much time on the day of filming because we had put the work in pre-production, so to speak.
Yeah, it's definitely a big part of the one of the big advances is having that ability to just jump on a virtual call. So let's get into, we talked about reading the script for the purposes of really kind of memorizing it and knowing what happens in terms of the story. Now let's talk about specific breakdowns. So usually in like week 2 or week 3, I'll start to make my own breakdown of the script, and I'll make several different breakdowns, and I'm going to go through them quickly with you. And then if anyone watching along has questions, they can jump in. Mike, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. But there's quite a few, so I just want to make sure that we hit them all, so that if anyone's watching at home, they could kind of emulate this process, and it can help them with their strategy to make the movie. So the first thing I do is I go through and I make an art breakdown, where I read the script just with the purpose of props, production design, art direction. If there's a crazy neon light that I want in this scene, I'm going to write it down. If there's something unique in terms of how I want the prop to look, I'm going to write that down. So, art breakdowns, very crucial. Remember, the art department is literally in charge of everything the camera sees that's not a fucking human being or an animal. When you put it that way, it really opens your mind up and you're like, shit, that's a pretty fucking crucial job. Literally everything the camera sees that's not breathing. So you're gonna want to do a nice art breakdown. Next, I'll do a special effects breakdown. Okay, a lot of my movies, if you watch them in the past, they usually have quite a bit of violence, and with that violence, well, you need to have special effects. I'm talking good old fashioned practical special effects, effects that we get to ooh and ah and actually see happen in front of us. So that's going to be second. What that means is you're probably going to go through your script and say, ooh, Jimmy gets punched in the face on page 5. Do I want him to have a bloody nose, or do I want it to be clean? Because these are things that they're going to ask you. Your makeup person is going to say, like, hey, on page 16, Bob falls and scrapes his knee. Do you want there to be blood when he comes up? And a lot of times you almost get like, no, I don't want blood. I just want, he just kind of falls, and they're like, well, okay, I just asking, because they
Sure.
don't know what's in your head. Again, it gets back to like in prep, you're flipping your fucking brain inside out and you're showing it to the world. So have all the breakdowns will get people ready to have all these questions be answered, because trust me, the questions are going to come. So all the special effects, go through, break them down. I usually just list them, guys. It's real simple. Again, I'm a simple motherfucker. I don't do any kind of crazy color coding. I don't have a fucking green pen for effects and a blue pen for. I type them up or I write them down. Literally, like page 5, scene 3, Bob gets punched in the face. Special effect, and I'll maybe a sentence about it. All right. After that, we're going to do a stunt breakdown, okay? Because you're going to have to say to yourself, all right, I got to bring in a stunt person. How intense do we want this stunt to be? Is it as much as just a person doing a simple bump on the ground where they fall, or are they going to have to flip into a table? How intense do you want these stunts to be? Remember, something as simple in an action line like Jimmy punches Bob, that could be very simple, and it could be something that we don't even need a stunt coordinator for. I can just get it in one cell, or I could maybe make it really cool and the guy gets hit and he does a backflip and he lands
Right.
on it. He looks all fucked up. All right, you know what? We're going to need a stunt performer for that one. So stunt breakdown is big. And another, the producers are going to love you for doing all these breakdowns because all of these breakdowns eventually get you closer to figuring out financial numbers. How many stunt performers do we need? How many days do I need the coordinator? How much fake blood do we need? How
Right.
bloody is this going to be? Um, and we appreciate it. We've got Stephen E. following along here, listing some of these various breakdowns if you want to go through and check it out. Okay, so after that, this was one that even I forget sometimes. A vehicle breakdown, picture cars. Okay, go through and really decide. All right, my main character, he's going to be driving a green Jeep. Why? Does it need to be a green Jeep? Can it be a purple Jeep? Can it be a white Jeep? Do you really give that much a fuck? What if it's a Camry? Do you mind if it's a Camry? No, I'm married. It's got to be a Jeep. These are all things that you need to figure out. And in your notes of this breakdown I'm talking about, you could even put, like, for example, if it's really important, must be white Jeep.
Right.
If it's not that important, I'll say like SUV or minivan, could be anything. Like you can even like remind yourself of this shit. These notes are as much for you as they're for anyone else too, because we forget. There's a lot of shit to remember. All right, so vehicle breakdown is pretty straightforward. Um, Costume breakdown. Um, this one's again pretty obvious, but go through and see, all right, is there anything special that you want? Are there any colors that you want? Color palette's big. We're going to talk about this more when we do a Johnny and Clyde episode eventually, and I can't give too much away. But Johnny and Clyde has a very specific color palette, right down to the wardrobe, and it's all very much tied together. And there was very little that was chosen by accident in that film in terms of what the costumes are wearing and what colors they have on. So costume breakdown's big. And then this one kind of connects with costume breakdown as well. And your script supervisor is going to love you for doing this. And that's like a timeline breakdown, meaning, all right, from page 1 to page 90 in this script, how many days does this movie take place in? Does this movie
Right.
all take place in one day? Does it take place in a week? Does it take place throughout the course of a year? If so, all right, on page 10, when he goes to get his brakes done at the mechanic, is that day 2? Is that day 3? Is that a month later? Because we got to know these things because wardrobe is affected by that. Facial hair. Let's say the actor could have a beard in one scene and be shaven in another. Maybe you want to show the passage of time by
Right.
fucking with your actor's physical appearance in such a way that you're like, oh, he has a beard now. Time has passed. So you're going to get asked that as a filmmaker. You're going to get, hey, what day is this on? And I'll admit, I was very bad at this in the beginning. People would ask me what day it is, and I'd be like, what fucking day? What do you mean? It's Tuesday. What do you mean what day it is? And they'd be like, no, in the movie, what day is it? And I'd be like, oh, and then again, you look like a fucking idiot in front of everybody. You're standing there going, I don't know. And then they're saying, this is the fucking captain of the ship. He doesn't even know what fucking day we're on. So the timeline and schedule breakdown will save you some headache. And then finally, and I might be missing a couple little things, but for the most part, these are the basics. Visual effects breakdown. We talked about special effects. Those are actual practical effects. Now we're talking about visual effects, meaning CGI. A lot of people know it better as CGI. Because keep in mind, and I've been bit by this one before, and I wish I could go back, but there are very specific ways to film certain CGI shots. If there's a green screen involved, you don't want to move the camera too much. You want it to be as locked off and steady as possible. That's just one tiny microcosm of an example. Usually you want your special effects person. I'm sorry. See, even I get them confused. Usually you want your VFX person, visual effects, on set while you're shooting. If they can't be there, obviously you don't need them to run of the show. But on the days that you're shooting your CGI stuff, you want that guy to be there because it's literally going to be like, oh, no, 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 no. Hold on. Move the camera this way because I won't be able to mask out that C-stand right there, whatever it is. they'll be the guide to actually let you know what is and what isn't possible. Because you don't want to spend time shooting something that you're going to get in the editing room later and you realize, fuck, this literally can't work. We wasted all of our time. I'm a giant fucking loser. I'm just kidding. You're not a loser. You're just learning. We're all learning. I've made every mistake possible. That is why I have this system down to a science, because to be completely honest with you, like these are all things that I wildly overlooked my first movie, particularly. And then by the second movie, I started to figure some of it out. And then I'd say it wasn't until probably my third film, Almost Mercy, where I really started to kind of key in on what we're doing here today, which is just this breakdown.
Let me jump in on the time thing, going back a few
Sure.
points, Tommy, because for instance, if a character does get a bloody nose, on page 5 or day 5 in the film, then on page 6 or day 6 in the film, he's going to need to have a little bit of remnants of that bloody nose, or if it's a broken nose, even more clearer in this example. Or if a character ages and you want to show that their facial hair has grown in, or if they've their facial hair has been shaved off, or whatever. I mean, look at something like Castaway, an extreme example. Tom Hanks had to lose a bunch of weight. I'm not sure how they did it, but they filmed his heavier scenes, I think, first, and then he had to lose a bunch of weight, and he went and filmed a totally different movie, The Terminal, in the meantime, and then they went back to Castaway. So the visual representation of the characters in relation to time is a huge thing. So the clarity that you're endorsing is very important, I think.
Yeah, and it's an easy thing to forget, because remember, here's the confusing part, guys. You're shooting this shit all out of sequence. So it's not like you have the benefit of shooting it how it plays out in the script. That'd be a little easier to be like, wait, what day are we on? Where are we at in the story? Because hey, again, I've made the mistakes before. There's a scene in Army of the Damned, I think, where a character's like arm gets ripped off or damaged badly, and it frankly hasn't happened yet.
Right.
But in the scene, you can see their damaged arm, and you're like, oh fuck, they're not supposed to be banged up yet, and they're banged up. So these things happen, man. I mean, listen, the greatest mistakes. I mean, let me say it again. Let me take that one. Rewind for a second. The greatest movies have some epic fucking mistakes. So it's gonna happen. But if you follow this strategy guide here, it'll happen a little bit less. A couple of the more crucial parts of the process are have yet to even be dove into. Shot listing is probably the most important part of this whole process, to me at least. As a filmmaker, knowing where you're going to put the camera every step of the way and leaving as little time as possible on set for any kind of thinking. On set, we don't think. The thinking is done. Your chance to think is long gone by the time you walk onto the set. All you're doing at that point is executing on set. You're not figuring shit out. You have this plan and you're just executing it. Because on a lot of these shoots, we're talking some of them are 12 days, some of them are 15 days. And when you're dealing with those kind of schedules, you don't have any time to be thinking about anything.
Right.
It's literally like, okay, great, let's get the shot list. We're going to start off with a wide shot on Mike doing his podcast. Then we're going to punch in for some coverage. I'd like a nice little moving shot of his face. And then let's just get one final establishing shot of the outside of the building, and then we'll move on. Now, on an unprepared set, you'll see the director, they'll kind of do this. They'll kind of look around, and they'll play director, and they'll be like, thinking and looking, composing. That's all bullshit. If you're doing any of that shit, you didn't do your fucking job. You didn't do your homework. You're not fooling me. You're playing director at this point. Because when you're directing a movie, it should be like a smash and grab robbery. It should be like, okay, here's the plan. Let's get in. Let's take the shit. Let's get the fuck out of here because we have to get to the next set. So shot listing is everything. I literally have every single shot of every movie I'm going to make already in mind ahead of time, right down to the camera moves. And I'm getting a little bit better at this, and I don't do this all the time, but occasionally now I'll put what fucking lens I want on the camera. So I'll even be like, all right, let's get this and let's do it in a 35. So that, because guess what? Your DP is going to ask you, what kind of lens do you want on this shot? And if I have it written down on my shot list, I don't even have to fucking tell him. I can just tell him right then. This medium shot, but 35, moving in. Boom, do it. And right then it took me 3 seconds instead of 1 minute. And I know what you're thinking. Well, 1 minute's not that long. It is. If you stack all those minutes up, you get a fucking hour, and then that's big money. So shot listing's big. I won't get too into it, but I do have a unique way of storyboarding that, we could probably do a whole episode on this, but I got overwhelmed. I love drawing ever since I was a little kid. I always loved to draw. I'm not that good at it. I'm okay. But I knew that I needed to storyboard as my career kind of progressed. Otherwise, I ain't worth a shit if you're not
Right.
storyboarding. Like, who the fuck are you making movies without a storyboard? But I found that it was taking me so much time to draw every little uh, frame. And frankly, like, I didn't want to do stick figures. I just didn't want to do it. I think it looks like shit. And also, like, I'm not a fucking comic book artist. Like, certain positions and movements, just, I wasn't able to draw them right. Like, I'm just not that good. So and time was of the essence. I had a very short prep for this was actually for Johnny and Clyde when I enacted this style. Now, I'm an action figure collector from way back. I'm a big fucking geek. If I were to turn this camera to the side, you'd see I got an entire shelf filled with hundreds of action figures, and I talk to them all every night. No, I don't. But
Every
it's
night.
just every morning. Yeah, exactly. So I said to myself, you know what? Let me find the right action figures. Let me put together a little casting process. And I started casting the movie with the action figures that I have. And for me, G.I. Joe seemed to work the best because they're the most posable little bastards. They've got
Right.
all that articulation
Points.
going on. And
Yeah.
we all know every G.I. Joe's got a little hole on their foot so that you can stick them on a stand. So they weren't
Right.
going to be falling over. I could put them on stands. And I just suddenly, like, I went in my basement and I dug up, one fortunate thing, I never threw out anything. I'm a fucking pack rat. I have like this Playmobil castle set from when I was a little kid that has these castle walls. So I was able to build these little like sets. And
Right.
I was able to, again, we talked about location scouting's a big part of this prep too, which we'll get into, but I already had the location photos, so I kind of knew what the sets looked like. So I built mock-up, not to scale, of course, but mock-ups of like what these sets looked like. And I started just taking, instead of drawing storyboards, I would just set up the men, the little guys, in the positions I wanted and just take pictures with my iPhone. And then I had my assistant, Mike, shout out to Mike Braga, take the photos, and we made a book. And I had this like sick fucking book of Johnny and Clyde. It was really cool, not to name drop, but I got to show Megan Fox and she thought it was awesome. And I'm still upset that I didn't get her to sign my storyboard. That would have been a cool little memento from production. But it was cool, it was unique, it was different. And frankly, like, as cool as it looks, because it does look cool. I mean, we lit it. That was the other part about this process. Glenn Ciano, my DP on the film, shows up with a fucking arsenal of flashlights
Right.
and various types of little clip lights and pen lights. And there he is. He's lighting the fucking scenes. He's kind of getting an advanced look at how he wants. Ooh, we want a pool of light over here. Oh, I'd like to have this be more like a, kind of a pan the light by here. So like we both were able to prep in our own right. And the shots look really cool. But the big thing is it was functional. It was effective. We actually got to, I could take these storyboards and show them to the other department heads and say, hey, this is literally what I want it to look like. And they
Right.
laughed. At first, they laugh, obviously, because it's funny because you're seeing like a very dramatic photo of a fucking plastic woman. And they're laughing. But then they're like, oh, this is fucking sick. Yeah, this is awesome. Okay, cool. Yeah, we can do that. So remember, these are all visual people because we're working in movies. So you show them something like that, A, they know what to do now, and B, they think you're a little crazy as the filmmaker. But the good crazy, the kind of crazy that we could put in a blender and shake it up and make something special happen. Uh,
Sure.
so so you get to show you're crazy a little, and what I mean by that is like, hey, clearly you didn't just draw some fucking stick figures.
Right.
This guy put the time in, you know. So that's my little shot listing way of doing it. Um,
Enthusiastic might be the word, Tommy. I mean, crazy has a lot of connotations, but you're enthusiastic to be there. You're enthusiastic for the work that you're doing, and that can be contagious to your colleagues and so forth.
yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. Stephen E., you think I have a book in my future? Well, maybe someday, brother. As I say, never say never. Big time. Yeah, the shot list is the key. Miss Ash is back. We haven't seen Miss Ash in a couple of weeks. Thank you. It is a creative process, and you know what? I think that I'll be posting some of those photos on my Instagram soon, or maybe I'll do a reel. That's a good idea. I'm gonna make a nice Insta reel of some of the storyboards from Johnny and Clyde. And the fun thing is, like, some of the storyboards even had like some spoilers in the movie. I remember being like, it's funny because nobody knows, but like this is literally the end of the fucking movie
Right.
that they're seeing right here. If they could ever speak action figure, they would be able to translate the end of the film.
I wanted to say, Tommy, with you talking about timing issues earlier, Pulp Fiction has a famous one that people have deconstructed when Jules and Vern, Samuel L. Jackson and John Travolta's characters shoot the guy about the hamburgers, the frosty milkshake scene, whatever, in the apartment. There's a bunch of bullet holes behind Travolta and Samuel Jackson before the shooting actually happens. So basically, what happened is they filmed the scene a bunch of times and they just lost track of what they were doing. And before you know it, you've got this mistake on camera, and it just got stuck in the film, and it's become kind of a one of those things where the Romans are looking at the wristwatch, and some of the Ben Hur or whatever. So I mean, it happens all the time.
It's divine intervention, is what it was.
Yeah, yeah,
I think that's what Samuel L. Jackson says in the movie.
yeah.
All right, so back to I'm gonna pick up the pace a little bit because believe it or not, guys, the pre-production process is such a fucking process, and I mean it in a good way. That I could talk about this for another hour, but we all have lives to live and things to do. So I'm gonna pick up the pace a little bit here. Location scouting, something that I mentioned, and here's all I'm gonna say about location scouting. Take more photos and video than you ever fucking think that you need. Than you ever think you need. Because what's going to happen is you're going to say to yourself, okay, great. Yeah, we took photos, right? Great. And then you're going to get home and you're going to be drawing your little storyboards. Or you're going to be doing your little storyboard action figure diorama. And you're going to say, hey, is there a door over in that corner? Hold on. Let's take a look. Oh, man, we didn't photograph that corner? Fuck, man. Like we were right there. I could have just taken a picture of that fucking corner. And now I don't know what it looks like. So it's one of those things where, like, you know, just take more pictures than you ever think you need. I've been lazy, guys. Listen, that's one of my knocks. I ain't fucking perfect. I've been lazy in the past at times. And, being on a location scout and thinking that I got all the pictures that I need and maybe worrying too much about a goddamn Instagram story rather than just getting the fucking work done. I didn't canvas the area with photographs. And you know what? You make a mistake once, that's okay. We'll never make that fucking mistake again, though.
Well, there's a rule of thumb with this and a lot of other things. It's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it.
1000%, Mike. Because let's face it, it's as easy as snapping your fucking thumb like that. Just take an abundance of photos. Things to remember when location scouting. Obviously, we all have an image of what it's going to look like in our brain when we read the script. Learn to be flexible. Trust me, I've had to be in situations where I just didn't get to shoot in the same kind of location that I had in mind. But it comes down to this: do you want to not make the movie? No. So be creative and find a way to make your location work. Don't ever let the lack of a cool location be the reason why you made a shitty movie. I've probably been victim to that myself in the past. Just make that location work And as a pointer, maybe go back and watch some old movies from, the noir era or some old Hollywood studio movies and see how they lit really simple sets to make them look cooler than they actually are. Maybe it's a lighting thing. All right, we talked about shot listing. We talked about storyboarding. Let's move on to, this is again obvious, but one-on-one calls with the cast and key crew members. And I'm not talking about let's get on the phone for an hour. Nobody's got time for that. But guys, you'd be shocked. I've had like literally a 5 or 10 minute call with an actor, gotten to the bottom of what exactly they're trying to do. And in 5 minutes, we've had this kind of back and forth so that when we do get on set, it's like all hugs and it's like, let's get to work. You know what you're doing. Remember, we talked about, yeah, man, I brought the thing that we talked about. Great. I can't stress enough as Mike deals with an emergency situation over there. Mike, we hope
Yeah,
everything's okay. No
I
tidal
think
waves are coming.
it's a Amber Alert coming through.
Okay. Anyway, that that 5 minute conversation one on one can do so much, and you can learn that one little nugget that 5 minutes on the call saves you 20-30 minutes day one on set because and here's a tiny example of that, just the tiniest example, and then we'll move on. But let's say an actor comes to me and we're talking on the phone. Hey man, I got kind of long hair right now. Do you want me to keep it or should we trim it up a little bit? You know what? Why don't we just give it a little trim? I can have that arranged. Okay, yeah, sure. No problem. And then in that one little call, I know to call my hair person. Hey, Jimmy's going to show up with a little long hair. Just know that on day one, you're going to have to give him a little snip, okay? And now she's ready to go, or he is ready to go. It's just like now if we didn't talk about that on day one, and I know it sounds so little, but like now we'd have an extra 5 or 10 minute conversation about
Right.
some fucking bullshit that could have already. The second this guy shows up now, he's getting his haircut right away. It's all set up, and there's no conversation. We're trying to eliminate pre-production is all about trying to eliminate as many conversations as possible on set so that there's no back and forth on set. It's all just moving forward and doing shit and making things happen. Okay. Review the schedule with your first AD. This is big. The first AD is such a crucial part of the process. And I think I'm going to do a full episode on just like the first AD. What the fuck do they do? They're so important. It's literally like, the drill sergeant of the movie set. They're there to be fair and firm and ultimately get the movie shot on time. And part of that is making the schedule. So there might be some things in your head, meaning like for example, all right, I think we should block shoot this because we're going to be in the kitchen all day and we can get ahead and shoot some stuff from uh, scene 52 and 53 because we're also in the kitchen for those kind of shots. You can get strategic, and it's hard to explain just in this forum, but as a kid, I loved strategy games. I loved, I was a big like Axis and Allies kind of guy, and, Magic the Gathering, and playing games that make you think and make you kind of, for example, even as a sports fan, love playing franchise mode in Madden, where you get to actually control the team and hire all the players and draft them all and free agents. I love that element of strategy, and working with your first AD is about as Dungeons and Dragons strategy game as you can get for making movies because it's literally like a layout of every day and how you plan on shooting everything. And movies can be made and they can die in the scheduling process. So become best friends with your first AD because you two are in it till the bitter end.
Yeah, that's very important, Tommy. And just the pre-production, there's a lot to it, and I wish more people would watch this video and share the video if you're watching, because this type of information is very valuable if you're trying to make a movie, to have all this pre-production in your favor.
Yeah, please do. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Just search Tom DiNucci in your YouTube browser and it'll come on up. Subscribe. We're broadcasting this show every Tuesday live. come join us. Let's talk movies. We have so much fun, and we're building a really cool community. Stephen E, Kim K. We've got Anna who's been joining in. We've got Miss Ash. A lot of really great people. So let's keep that going.
I
We're
do
getting
like
down. Go ahead,
Anna
buddy.
Jick's. Anna Jick's got a cool YouTube profile pic. I think that's worth noting. Looks like, I'm assuming she's an actress because she's got a pretty cool headshot for her profile pic there.
And she says the toys figures are more helpful for the visual learners. Oh yeah, no, there's nothing like seeing something play out rather than having to think about it. Steven says steal some pictures from the internet. The internet is an amazing tool. So much great info. Oh, thank you very much, Kim. All right, so guys, we're kind of winding things down. We're getting to the fun part of the episode, as I like to say. So we talked about scheduling, which can be boring for sure, but so crucial. Uh, let's talk about just like some of the things that you can do as a filmmaker, meaning you yourself. You. I'm talking to you now. So when you close your eyes at night and you lay down and you're going to go to sleep, this is going to sound so kind of weird, cheesy, corny, but you should literally every night in that process watch the movie in your eyes. Like close your eyes and watch the movie before you go to sleep and see how far in you get as you memorize that script. And I'm talking about like you close your eyes and you see the titles roll in, you see the credits, you see how it's going to lay out, you hear the music, and then boom, you enter that first scene. And I want you to really be watching the movie on the inside of your eyelids. And it's really not as easy to do as you think. I mean, visualize everything and try to see how far into the film you can get before you drift off to sleep. And if you fall asleep before the end of the credits, that's okay because you're probably tired because you've been prepping really hard. But it's a fun exercise to kind of just, for me, I get really anxious and I can't even sleep during these kind of parts of the production. So if you can maybe, this kind of helps me. It's better than counting sheep. Close your eyes and like Steven says, go to bed with those characters in your mind, and be visualizing that goddamn movie right off the bat every night, and it'll be in your brain. But let's talk about just some physical things. For me personally, it's gonna sound funny, but I'm a little bit of a workout guy, and I know that when I make the movie, I'm not gonna work out at all.
Right.
I'm not gonna train. I don't want any bit of energy coming out of my body that's not focusing on the movie. So I'm not going to lift weights. I'm not going to do cardio. As far as my diet goes, I probably won't be eating quite as healthy as I normally do because I'm on set and I'm just grabbing whatever I can and I'm going and I'm eating at weird times. So the prep process, those like 6 to 8 weeks before, I'm training my ass off. I'm doing cardio every morning. Not so much lifting weights, but cardio, 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 because I want to be in better shape than anyone on set. And I don't mean like this, we're not talking about like who looks the best at the beach. I'm talking about like cardio shape, meaning like I'm going to run fucking circles around you. I'm going to run up the stairs. I'm going to run down the stairs. If you need help grabbing that shit, I'm going to help you grab it. And you won't see me fucking yawning in my chair. You know what I mean? Like I'm going to try to get myself in the best physical shape I can before a movie because I know I'm going to beat myself up physically during the fucking movie.
Right.
So that's a little way that I've learned over the years, like work out hard in prep so that you're in great physical shape, right? When we're a few pounds down, don't we just move a little quicker? Don't we just tend to maneuver and get around a little bit better? So
Yeah.
like if you can be day one at your fighting weight, feeling good about yourself, going to look nice in those press photos that you take, right? There's all these vanity type based reasons for it too. When you get your behind the scenes pictures with the actors, you're not going to look like some fucking slob. Not that there's anything wrong with being a little slobby every now and then. It happens to us all. And by the end of the shoot, I turn into a massive slob. But by the beginning of the shoot, get yourself in good shape. And all vanity aside, you'll appreciate just the cardio benefits. You'll feel good. You'll feel ready to kick some ass. And then this is kind of like the final beat here. Well, not the final beat. There's a couple more, but get all your personal effects in order. making a movie is almost like going off to jail. It's like that scene when Ray Liotta goes to prison, like right before in Goodfellas, and he's like, "All right, take me to jail," because you're not going to be able to call your friends. You're not going to be able to really be in touch with mom and dad every day. Your girlfriend, your boyfriend, whatever. Like, say goodbye to them. You're not going to be able to put that kind of emotional time into anything. And even like, other business ventures. Some of us have safety jobs. Some of us have other jobs that we're working on in between making movies while we're chasing the dream. Make sure you tell all the people at your safety jobs or side jobs, side projects, hey, I'm making a movie. I'm going to be kind of like off the grid. Don't even say that you'll try to get back to them. You won't be able to. Just say, I'm off the grid. Make it seem like you're fucking going to war for 3 weeks. Let them know that it's that level of importance to you, and it's just like, hey, listen, and don't be afraid to say, I've said all these things before, and at first it sounds weird, to say these kind of things to people that you're close to, but then you realize, like, you got to be selfish in this situation. How often do you get a chance to make a movie? You're going to let your cousin who's busting your balls to go do something, or your girlfriend who is mad that you didn't go to their little sister's graduation party? No, you can't be thinking about any of that bullshit. You got to be focused on you and the movie. So in those last few weeks, get all your personal effects in order and let people know, like, hey, the dentist appointment that you forgot about, or who's going to take care of your pets, all that bullshit that seems like kind of funny, but you really got to figure out, like, even like simple as like laundry, guys. Like, I do a ton of laundry and make sure that I have like almost 2 weeks worth of clothing and underwear like ready to fucking go, so that like I don't even have to think about that shit during production. Like, I got all my fucking clothes ready to go. Same thing with like shopping. Like, you'll go home at night and like you're fucking you're out of groceries, and like, oh fuck, I wrapped at 2 in the morning. Like, now I got to get milk. Like, what the fuck? So just be on all that shit.
Was going to say, Tommy, a lot of times there are people that, maybe they have a spouse or a parent or a child that they're in constant contact with. Well, if you're a filmmaker and you're trying to make a movie, or you are making a movie, you may not have those 20 texts a day to give to your significant other or your parent or your child or whatever the relationship is. Some people, even as friends, can be very phone reliant, needing to communicate with their close people every single day. And when you're making a movie, you might have to tell those type of friends or family, if you have them, I can't engage in that for 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever it's going to be. And that might be a tough conversation to have, but you might have to have it for the betterment of your film.
Yeah, and if you want to soften it up, guys, I've done this before. Like, if somebody gets cranky or gives you shit about it, just say, "Look, I'm gonna get you tickets to the premiere, and it'll be all worthwhile when you're watching the movie." Because remember, like Mike said, 2 or 3 weeks in day-to-day life, that's a fucking blip on the radar. But 2 or 3 weeks to live your fucking dream and make a goddamn movie, like, that's everything. So really build up a big old wall, compartmentalize the shit out of that, block all the noise out, and just focus on your movie for a few weeks. You owe it to yourself. So the last couple things, Mike actually touched upon this earlier, but when I'm like a week out, I like to do like a Zoom table read with the entire cast. We'll get everybody together. I'll have somebody read the action lines. You'd be surprised how many uh, oddities come up that don't make sense. And you're like, oh shit, how's he going to walk out of the room if he's holding a big bucket of chicken like that? No one's going to see the chicken. Where's he going to put it? Or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, you're gonna, as you actually play these situations out with actors, you're gonna learn where there might be some potential blocking issues, some potential like weird pitfalls, and you might just think of a cool shot, or the actors might improvise and suddenly say something that is wildly funny, that's funnier than what's written down, and you might make a note and say, ooh, that was fucking funny, let's do that again. Let's do that for real when we shoot. So table reads are great for that. They're not only great for the cast, they're great for the crew, because the crew will ultimately be listening along and figure out some shit that they can improve on as well. Camera tests. This is a big one. It's not a fun one. I'm particularly not a big gearhead. If you handed me a camera, I probably wouldn't know how to fucking turn it on. It's just not what I do. I'm not a cinematographer, I am kind of one of those guys that trusts the cinematographer to kind of helm that area of the ship, if you will. That being said, I've been on issues where gear just doesn't work. You might rent some gear, you might plug all the shit in. Again, forgive my rudimentary explanation of this, but you might plug all the shit in, you might put the lens on, you might press record, and you might find out that there's a blown pixel in the camera. And it just, oh shit, we got a defective camera here. Well, if you do that a couple days before you shoot, you might be able to rent a new one. If you do that like the day before or the day of in the morning when you're going to get your gear together, you're fucked. You're in a
Yeah.
lot of trouble. So I highly, highly recommend camera tests where you get your entire camera department together, or at least your DP, your first AC, and maybe a second AC or an intern or a camera PA. And the team just gets together and starts talking about the workflow, how you're going to connect it to them, how the camera is going to connect to the monitor, and where Video Village will be, and how often do you want that to move around. And again, for me, I'm not a super technical guy. This is like one of the more boring meetings to be a part of, but it's a necessary part of the process to make sure that you don't have a fucking hole in your boat on day one. I mean, without a camera, you're in a lot of trouble. We're gonna be this movie's gonna turn into a play real fast. That's where we hit our laugh track, our and action and action and action laugh track. All
You ever
right.
watch
So
those? Yeah. You ever watch those YouTube videos of like scenes from Seinfeld without the laugh track? It's
yeah, it's
kind
just
of
not the same. It's just
it's
not the same.
offsetting a little bit. Yeah.
It's just not the same. Okay, so we're winding it down. We talked about camera tests. We talked about Zoom table reads. Let's talk about like the days before, the couple days before, all that anxious energy, all them nerves, right? It's almost like one of those scenes in like, before Saving Private Ryan, the guys are on the landing cruisers and they're puking in their helmets about to invade the coastline. This is it. It's nerve wracking, which is why that last day or two before, again, get with your key crew people, maybe just your DP, maybe your production designer, maybe your stunt coordinator. Just do a walkthrough. Show up to the location. Like my football coach used to say, shoulders and helmets, shoulder pads and helmets, just a walkthrough. Meaning like we're not going in our full gear, just your helmets, your shoulder pads. You can wear shorts, sneakers. We're not hitting anyone today. We're just walking through the plays and we're just going to talk about what's going to happen. All right, I'm going to set up here. You're going to go here. So a couple days before, just be helmets and shoulder pads only, walking through, no contact, and just visualize and visualize and visualize. That'll help kill some of the anxiety. Another good thing is to have a kickoff event with your cast and crew. I'm not talking about some wild fucking party where everybody gets trashed and acts a fool because now you've made a complete asshole out of yourself before the movie even starts. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a low-key event, a dinner, a mixer, a couple drinks, whatever, maybe coffee, whatever. Get all the key players together and have them kind of share some fellowship before you even arrive on day one. And it'll just break that little bit of ice. I'm not saying that everybody needs to sing kumbaya together or any of that bullshit. But sometimes if you can just have that little icebreaker, it can be nice and it can make day one a little smoother.
Yeah, chemistry is a big thing, Tommy. When you're making a team, and sometimes, as you have been able to, myself as well, work with the same people for 4, 5, 6, 7 projects. But there's always going to be somebody new to the team, whether it's an actor or a crew member or an intern, and you want to make everybody feel part of the team and make that chemistry, for lack of a better term, shorthand. We use that term a lot here too, where people just get to know each other and they don't feel like they have to take a 5-minute conversation when a 30-second conversation will do the same thing.
You're building a rapport with people, and that's a good thing. Got a couple other here. Stephen E. thought that he was the only one who visualizes. Nope, Stephen, I'm right there with you watching the movie inside my brain. Anna says planning is key. It really is. I mean, and let's face it, in any aspect of life, it's like if you put even an extra couple minutes into something, it's probably going to be better than just walking into it, bold and kind of just off the cuff. So here's my final note to everybody in prep. My final note is on those last day or two, the weekend before, whatever, try to rest as much as you can. I mean, physically rest. I mean, as much sleep as you can get, lay down as much as you can get. And I know what you're thinking. Well, it's crazy. Those days before must be nuts. How could you ever sleep? How could you ever play? Well, hey, it's crazy if you didn't do your fucking job for the last 6 weeks. But if you've been doing your job methodically, by then you should be pretty lined up, a day or two out. You should have already had all your conversations with all your cast. You talk to your crew. You've got a storyboard. You know every fucking frame in the movie because of your shot list. You've walked through the sets. You've scouted the locations. You're on easy street. If you followed this guide to a T, you're on easy street the day or two before. And all you're doing is worrying about resting and making sure that your body is totally fueled up and ready, because guess what? You ain't going to get to rest again for a while. Having a really nice night's sleep, that's probably not going to happen for a little bit. So make sure you get that the weekend before or the days before. Uh, and ultimately, just remember, you're running scared in prep, and that's an okay thing. Sometimes we never run faster than when we're being chased by something. And I kind of think that you should be feeling that way when you're prepping your movie. You feel like you're being chased. And what are you being chased by? You're being chased by the opportunity to do something great in a very short period of time. So the more you prep it and the less time you're futzing around and thinking and bullshitting on set for day one, the better chance you have to make something great. That's all I got for you this week. Mike, do you have anything else to add?
Well, this was a fun episode and very insightful episode, and glad we saw some of our returning interactive folks that are watching, and a few people that have come back into the fold. And once again, we really appreciate that last week was our best viewed first week presentation, and with your help, if you copy and paste the URL into your Facebook pages or your Facebook film groups. I did some of that myself over the last several weeks, Tommy, sharing these episodes in some of the Florida-based film groups, because I think the same information that you're sharing from New England is also relevant to the whole country and all the world of independent filmmaking. And here's another thing, Tommy, just for the viewers. You don't necessarily have to be an aspiring filmmaker or an aspiring actor to watch and enjoy our show. If you just like our personalities or the content that we're talking about, we appreciate that as well. So you don't have to have the pressure of wanting to be in this industry to enjoy the show. Just I hope you enjoy it no matter what you're doing.
Yeah, we can't thank you enough for watching along with us. Remember, I am at Tom DiNucci on Instagram and Twitter, and you can find this show every Tuesday coming at you live, 11 Eastern on my YouTube. Search Tom DiNucci. So please subscribe if you haven't already. And like Mike said, the power of sharing is huge. The more shares we can get, just copy that URL and drop it down in your social media platform of choice, of preference. And next week, you can join us for. I could use a little help on this one, guys. And this is going out to everyone. This is something that I'm not good at and I want to get better at. So I decided to do a topic on it. So next week, it's episode 22. We're going to be talking about keeping in touch. And I don't know if you remember this, but when you were a kid and you'd be in 7th or 8th grade and you'd get your yearbook and your little buddy would sign the back. Oh, it was nice to see you. This was a great school year. KIT. And they'd say, keep in touch. And that was the little code for keep in touch, Kit. And I remember getting that the first time from a girl and being like, what the fuck does Kit mean? Like, oh, it's keep in touch. All right. So keep in touch, guys. How do you keep in touch? And what I'm saying by that is next week we're going to talk all about on these movie sets, we build these summer camp style relationships where we become so close with people in such a short period of time from being creative and having so much fun and making something that we're all really proud of. And we're the best of buddies and we're ringing around the goddamn rosy for a few weeks. And then what happens? Months go by, weeks go by, years go by. And sometimes you just didn't reach out as much as you should have, or you didn't check in as much as you might have wanted to. And you didn't have a movie that you were working on that you could offer them the job on. So you didn't really know how to stay in touch. So we're going to talk all about and just kind of open it up. And I want to hear everyone else's thoughts on this too. What are ways that we can just stay in touch in this business a little bit better in those kind of dark periods when we have months in between? And like, how do I keep that flame burning with my friends when I don't really have anything new to report? And it's kind of like, oh man. And I mean this for everybody. I'm talking about, obviously your friends are going to be your friends, but really I'm talking about keeping in touch with movie contacts, meaning actors that you've worked with that are very talented. You know, for me, like, I'll admit there are some name actors. I don't want to name drop now. Maybe I'll talk about it next week once I gather my thoughts a little bit. But there are some name actors that I probably could have stayed in better touch with over the years that I just didn't. Because maybe I, didn't reach out enough, or maybe I, whatever. So that's what next week is all about. We're going to talk about some unique ways and strategies to keep in touch within the movie business, which is ultimately just another form of networking.
Well, Tommy, on a somewhat related note, I just recently reacquired a computer, a desktop computer that I hadn't had in about 4 years. And on that desktop was several interviews from the Almost Mercy premiere, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, which was
Wow.
your third film. And for whatever reason, these interviews I don't think have ever been released. But there's really your female lead, Danielle Goulden, is interviewed. Some other notaries or people of note from the New England area. A lot of people were just there to see the film and weren't part of it. So some of them were just kind of, talking about whatever was going on. But Robbie Savage, I think, is actually interviewed. So over on Subscribe to Mike Messier YouTube channel, I should be sharing those interviews because it's a cute little time capsule. Keep in touch, so to speak.
Yes, it really is, guys. So we hope you keep in touch with us over the next 7 days and see us in the same place next week when we talk about how to keep in touch on episode 22 of And Action. Thank you so much. Please remember, if you haven't already, subscribe and share the show out and help us get more of y'all on the feed with us. Thanks, guys. We'll see you soon.